I celebrate Christmas, New Year's, Valentine's Day, St. Patrick's Day, Easter, American Independence Day, Halloween, Thanksgiving, and my birthday, with varying levels of energy. I make a point to enjoy these celebrations and I look forward to them every year. Further, I celebrate small successes with my children, often going out to eat or going to a movie when I release a new book or complete a course or whatever. A couple of weeks ago I talked about why I'm not Messianic, and one of the things that I mentioned there was that I don't make any particular attempt to keep up with the liturgical calendar of Judaism. For most of the Messianic Christians I've met, this is treated as heresy. I'm not a big fan of the word heresy in general. It's a term whose time has passed, I think. Too often, heresy just means I disagree, and I want to make you feel bad for it. I'm sorry, I just don't feel bad that we disagree, nor do I think that disagreeing with any person in particular will lead to eternal consequences just because of who that person is. If you want to convince me, you'll have to actually convince me. One of the points that people will bring up when they are trying most desperately to convince me that their view of this or that holiday should not be celebrated is to describe it as having pagan origins. The presumption is that any association with anything pagan must be shunned regardless of what other benefits it might hold. The problem comes when they try to more strictly define pagan. It turns out that there are plenty of things in the Old Testament law that are rooted in the worship of divinities other than Yahweh. For example, Leviticus 16 describes a ritual where 2 goats are offered, one to the divinity Yahweh, the other to the divinity Azazel. In some translations, they translate the name Azazel as scapegoat, which I think is fine, so long as it's capitalized. It is, after all, certainly a proper name in Hebrew. That's not the only pagan element in the Old Testament law, though. The description of the Ark of the Covenant and other furniture of the Jerusalem temple is clearly derived from Egyptian and other ancient Near Eastern pagan temples. The way that the Levitical priests performed their rituals was in line with the practices of other Near Eastern cultures. And on the list could go. Fundamentally, this view of God doesn't speak to me. This sees God more as a bureaucrat whose primary function is to make sure our passport to heaven gets processed correctly. If we upset him, for example by celebrating a rival's birthday, then he might neglect to process our paperwork, leading to us going to the wrong destination. Even if we offend him on accident. On the other hand, if we flatter him, he might just file the paperwork in our favor and get us a slightly bigger house. Even if that flattering comes at the expense of the innocent. This is exactly the God that Stephen Fry famously would look in the eyes and ask, "How dare you?" I don't see God as a divine paper pusher. God hasn't bothered to tell us his birthday because he doesn't actually care if we celebrate his birthday. That's not how we actually get into heaven. People get high-centered on the idea that we are saved by faith, which got confused with the idea that we are saved by being right, and that gets confused with being saved by being the most pedantic, and then the people trying so hard to be so right by being so pedantic have met people even more pedantic than them just a few too many times. After getting stuck in that particular crossfire just a few too many times where they've been shown that their favorite holiday or celebration is pagan, they've gotten the idea that God doesn't want them to have fun. For these people, pagan became a synonym for fun. There's a slight truth to what these people aim at. Righteousness is found in self-sacrifice. However, this is only true self-sacrifice. God isn't really impressed that we cut ourselves and deprive ourselves like the prophets of Baal on Mount Carmel. 1 Kings 18 verses 18 to 39, self-sacrifice is when we give up our slight goods to the good of others. When the great king separated the sheep and goats, he didn't ask how many Christmases they skipped. Matthew 25 verses 31 to 46, he asked what they did for each other. There is an old caricature of Puritans that describes them as living in haunting fear that someone somewhere may be happy. I think that too often, there is a subset of Christians that end up being exactly like this. It hurts the Christian message, and it drives away those who really do need God's help. The idea that God looks disapprovingly at those of us having fun is hurtful, hateful, and unchristian. As long as the fun we have improves the world instead of tearing it down. If God has called you to a life without celebration, then that is for you and I will not step between you and your calling. As for me, God has called me to find every way I can to celebrate my family and my life. If the father of the prodigal son can celebrate, Luke 15 verse 23, so can I. But I don't need to wait for my children to return to celebrate them.